Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. It's been a long time since I've said that, but don't get too excited about me returning just yet, as I'm not fully prepped and ready to come back to YouTube just yet, but I should be back in the coming months. This break has definitely been doing me a lot of good, and I'm feeling quite refreshed, and I'm in a better headspace now. Well, if you take away working retail during the holiday season, getting over a crush, or working on making big life changes, I'm doing quite good. But we're not here to talk about me, we're here to talk about music. And we're doing a voiceover too because I don't feel like dealing with my camera right now. And I also plan on getting a new and better one in the early part of the year. So if you want to see me, just follow me on Instagram for the occasional moment that I post a selfie. Anyways, this year has been full of a lot of music, and I definitely got into a lot of different releases this year. That being said though, I feel like this year was a bit of a weak year for music for me. There weren't as many releases that I fell madly in love with this year like in the past, which honestly made my rankings pretty easy. Today we're going to be covering my top 5 favorite EPs and top 10 favorite albums of 2022. These were releases that stood out to me in a sea of just okay releases and other impressive ones. There were a few albums that I struggled to rank since I loved them so much, but I honestly had to cut them out. We'll talk about them more later on though. Now, for those of you who might be watching me for the first time, I'm very much a metalhead, so majority of these are going to be metal releases. Not only that, but I also mostly listen to female fronted bands and female artists in general, so be prepared for a lot of that. I do enjoy other genres, but metal is my bread and butter. Progressive, symphonic, and gothic metal subgenres to be more specific. Now let's dive on into this, but before we do so, if you're new here to my channel, don't forget to hit subscribe and also be sure to hit that like button because that'll help me out a lot. All my links are down in the description box below, which are to my Instagram and Twitter. And without further ado, let's dive on into this. We're going to start out with the EPs. There weren't that many EPs that really did it for me, but there also weren't that many on my radar this year. Here are the lower tier EPs that I checked out if you're curious about that and what I liked but didn't like enough to possibly have them end up on my rankings. But coming up in 5th place is Enna Fiori, Magna Tonali, Edición Especial. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not. Very much sorry if I butchered that. This EP is full of songs that have been previously released, but they've all been reworked in some sort of way, which is how I made it onto my rankings. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be here. Anyways, this is a beautiful EP that shows off just how versatile of a singer Enna has become over the years and how much her range has improved. In true Enna Fiori fashion, this release is full of beauty, drama, chaos, and versatility. She knows how to be consistent without being stuck to a singular vibe. And my favorite songs off this EP are going to be Sahali and El Dia de la Lira. Again, hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's Mexican, so this is Spanish. I am a white man from the southeastern US. Cut me some slack. Coming up in 4th place is Bimbo Core from Scene Queen. I randomly learned about Scene Queen through a Vampire Freaks ad on Instagram, and her song G-String was featured in it, and I became obsessed from that moment. It's a bit of a self-aware throwback to artists that were active in the scene years ago, but with a modern spin on it. This first EP definitely shows to us that Hannah is here to do what she wants to do and just is gonna have fun with it. Just like Volume 2, it's her having fun. I was close to putting Volume 2 on here with Volume 1, but I decided that would be a bit too extra. Just know I wanted to do so. And no, the Boner song isn't on my top 2 favorite songs in the album, but I still love Pink Rover. I just love Pink Panther a little bit more. Which brings me to my favorite songs off this EP, which are Pink Panther and especially Pink Bubblegum. Number 3, we have A Song of Death, A Song of Pain from Marcelo Bobbio. Is this one a bit cheap given that there's only but 2 songs on it? Nah. I fucking love my queen, so we're including it. This is such an emotional EP, and you can tell just how personal it is to Marcelo when you listen to it. She really poured her heart and soul and pain into this, and you can hear it. I definitely resonate with Loneliness Anthem number 2 more, but I think that's because I went through my first breakup this year and I just connected with those emotions so much. If you like getting into your feels, definitely give this EP a spin. You'll love it. And the order of the 2 songs that I found to be my favorites, my favorite being number 2 and then number 1 being the second favorite. I mean, it's kind of easy to play favorites with this one since there's only but 2 songs on it. And coming up in second place, this might be a little bit of a shocker for some people, but for me, it's not that much of a shocker. But that is the Alchemy Project from Epica. Honestly, I didn't think I was going to like this EP that much, but I'm happy to say that I really love it. After being a bit let down by Omega, which it's not a bad album, it's just not what I was wanting from them. This was definitely something that I needed from them. There's one song on here that I don't care for, which is the song that they did in collaboration with God Dethroned, since that's not the type of sound that I enjoy when it comes to metal music. I don't really like that type of death metal sound, and also it just didn't sound like Epica at all. It just sounded like a God Dethroned song. The rest of the EP is absolutely wonderful. Something that I hope that they decide to do after this experimental EP and collaborative EP that they've done is to experiment with more atmospheric stuff like we heard on Sirens and The Minor. Those are some of the best songs that they have ever released, and I've been obsessed with this band for 10 years now, so for me to say that that is some of their best work, that should tell you something. And my favorite songs off this EP are The Minor and especially Sirens of Blood and Water. Now, before we get into my number 1 pick, let's see the few that could have made it onto my rankings this year. Not that many, but they definitely made a lasting impression. Now it's time for number 1, which is As If We Never Existed from Torn Between Two Worlds. This project is a spiritual successor to Inctoria, a side project created by Chris Wren and Sarah Jezebel Deva many years ago that sadly didn't go that far. I was so excited when this project got announced and that things were actually going somewhere with it, since I had been missing Sarah fronting a project for quite some time. This definitely has some Inctoria vibes, but it's also something different enough to warrant a new name. It's personal, heartfelt, beautiful, tragic, but uplifting and encouraging. I'm hoping this project actually goes somewhere and that we'll get more from them eventually, because if this release has shown me anything, it's just how much I truly adore Sarah and her work and how I continue to stay in love with her work after all of these years. And my favorite songs on here are The Beauty of Deception, and 100% without a doubt my favorite song off this EP is The Woman That Never Was. Now that we've covered the EPs, let's get into the albums. There were a lot of releases that I checked out this year, but like I mentioned earlier, there weren't that many that really did it for me. Normally, I don't have this many in the lower tier, but here we are. This year had a lot of potential, but not a whole lot really got to me. But what did get me definitely did it for me, and I couldn't let go. Let's start looking at them, beginning with number 10. Which is Revival from Alina Livera. Some of you who have kept up with the underground, symphonic, progressive, and or power metal scenes might recognize Alina, as she got her start in that side of the music scene. But in recent years, she's taken on R&B and is doing a stunning job with it. This release is a perfect example of someone doing what they love and making art out of it. I love her work in the metal scene, but this album is such a treat. Heartfelt, encouraging, empowering. This was definitely something that I needed this year with all the struggles that I've gone through. I'm so happy for this beautiful friend of mine, and I cannot say enough that will show how proud I am of her. And my 3 favorite songs off this album are Helianthus, Mystic Lights, and The Comeback. Coming up at number 9 is Seeing the Elephant from The Offering. If you aren't someone who leans the slightest bit to the left politically here in the US, this is definitely not going to be the release for you. but it definitely is for someone like me who does. It's a very thought-provoking album that doesn't sugarcoat anything. You want someone to be real with you on how things are politically here in the US? This is definitely a prime example, covering topics such as school shootings, police brutality, climate change, abortion rights, separation of church and state, to a lighthearted song about being dominated. Low-key hope it's a way for the singer to say he's a sub-bottom, but I don't even know if he's queer. But it's not going to stop me from viewing him being domed by a man. And my 3 favorite songs off this album are With Consent, which is the domination song, Flower Children, and Wasp. Number 8, we have Umbra Mortis by She Must Burn. This album is proof that vocalists can make or break your sound. Don't get me wrong, the original vocalists in this band were great, but these new ones have elevated their sound to such a degree that it's like an entirely new band. From trying to go for the black and symphonic deathcore sound to fully executing it, and all while staying true to your roots is all you could really ask for from a band. This album came out of nowhere for me as I randomly saw it pop up in my recommended releases on Spotify, and I remember the name since I checked these guys out years ago and absolutely fell in love with this album. Their male vocalist voice packs such an intense punch, and their female singer being a soprano brings such an epic dimension to their sound. From beautiful melodies to bone-crushing riffs, this is such a dark delight. And my 3 favorite songs off of this album are Misery Eternal, Of Blood and Bone, and Eulogy. Number 7, we have Beautiful Distortion from The Gathering. This release came out during a great time of the year for me, and I have so many wonderful memories attached to it. Even though those memories are linked to a relationship that ended, I still can't help but be filled with peace and good vibes listening to this album. A chill, peaceful time with bits of strength and depth, this album really knows how to draw you in. I never really gave an album with Celia at the Reigns a full listen, but I'm so glad that I did with this one, because it became an instant favorite that I've been putting on all year long. And my favorites off of this album are Grounded, In Color, and Pulse of Life. At number 6, we have Daughters of the Night by Nocturna. This album was a very pleasant surprise for me. I've known of Ren Stillnight for a while thanks to her work with The Autist back in the day and her covers on YouTube. I tend to not really be too into symphonic power metal, but this band packs depth, beauty, and drama, and that is something that I need to have in order to stay interested in a lot of projects these days. From speedy power metal tracks to dark and dreary gothic metal tracks, this is such a versatile album fronted by 2 very versatile singers. I also recently realized that I can sing Grace Darkling's parts perfectly, meaning Homegirl is an alto and I can hit those same notes. And then Ren and Grace are such a powerhouse of a duo, and I cannot wait to see and hear what all it is that they have in store for us in the future with this project. And my favorites off of this album are Blood of Heaven, Daughters of the Night, and In This Tragedy, which I really hope that they release a music video for In This Tragedy because it is absolutely stunning. Number 5, we have Vermilion Eclipse from Semblant. I have been a fan of this band for nearly a decade now, and I have to say that this is their best work to date. I was not expecting to love this release since their previous work has never really blown me away before, but this one definitely did. After my first playthrough, I knew that this one was special. The production and the writing on it are absolutely wonderful, and it really shows what this band is truly capable of, and they don't shy away from things either. Although I do wish that they would have shown off the soprano side of Mizuho, I'm so beyond happy with this release as a whole that it's not an issue for me. And my favorites off of this album are Purified, Day One Oblivion, and Heretic. At number 4, we have Starlight and Ash from Oceans of Slumber. I was a bit nervous after hearing that this album would be a big departure from what is that we're used to from them. But bitch, when I tell you this new direction is absolutely wonderful. Southern Gothic is a great way to describe it, but they stay true to that progressive doom metal sound that they've always had over the years, just way more stripped down. This album is so very intimate and touches you on such a deep level that previous albums weren't able to achieve as a whole like this one does. Also, I just have to chime in real quick and mention that they're stunning live and that it was just so wonderful finally being able to meet Dauber and Cammy in Atlanta over the summer. I nearly couldn't go since I had the flu about a week prior and then got tonsillitis a week after the show. And it is hands down one of the best shows that I've ever been to. And my favorite songs off of this album are The Shipbuilder's Son, The Hanging Tree, and Red Forest Roads. Now we're in the top 3, and picking the top 3 was so difficult because honestly any of these could have been my number 1 pick, so ranking these out was so difficult. But coming up at number 3, we have Unfinished from Shield of Wings. This band disappeared for such a long time and then randomly comes back into the chat and drops an absolute banger of an album. I learned about this band after learning about Grace Meriden years ago and really enjoyed the Solarium EP. But this album features 2 new vocalists and it's a masterpiece. Again, didn't think I would be as into this release as I am, but it's so fucking good. Morty being an alto means that I can have fun showing off my range as a singer when I sing along to the epic tracks on the album, and Aaliyah's screams are wonderful. The epic production, the lyrics being story-driven and not done in a typical way, and the fact that it sounds unlike any symphonic metal album that I have heard are just a few things that makes this album one of the best in my opinion. My favorite songs off of this album are Wetland, Mind of Myth, and especially Native Colossus. Coming up at number 2 is Tales from 6 Feet Under Volume 2 from Charlotte Fessels. This might shock some people given that Volume 1 was my number 1 last year, but this one didn't tug at my heart and soul as much. Doesn't mean I don't love it to the moon and back though, the vibe is just different. This album is just as experimental as the first, but it's definitely more rocky and not as much as a comfort album as the first was for me. We get strength, power, range, and some anger on this release, which definitely sets it apart from the previous one. I'm always going to look forward to what Charlotte has up her sleeves. I mean, she's my biggest inspiration in life and my favorite artist, but I'm curious as to how she's going to step up and make Volume 3, if it happens, better than these first 2, given that they're already so amazing. All I know is that it better be just as experimental and challenge the metalheads to listen to stuff that isn't strictly metal like this album here. And my favorite songs off of it are Good Dog, Venus Rising, and surprisingly enough, The Final Road Trip. Didn't expect it to be my favorite song off the album, but it really is. Before we get into my album of the year, let's see the honorable mentions. There were quite a few, as you can see, but there were some standouts even amongst them that could have made it onto my top 10, and I just want to quickly shout them out. Do want to give a shout out to Anna Bruner's debut album of her own, which is League of Distortion's self-titled debut album. Definitely a fun album that packs a wonderful punch. Death Wears Your Sting was such a pleasant surprise for me. I've enjoyed Avatarium's work over the years, but never gotten into a full release from them. This album, however, was a really great release and just did it for me. Mimetica? Again, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. From Monica Naranjo was so close to making it to my top 10, but I just love my top 10 a bit more. It's such a beautiful and theatrical release from her. Lunarian really came out swinging with their debut album, Burn the Beauty, and Eileen really came in to remind us just the queen that she is. I highly encourage you to check out Bleeding Out. You can thank me later. It was so hard to not include Hold the Girl from Rina Sawayama, but similar to Monica Naranjo's album this year, I love my top 10 a bit more. Lastly, we have Fascination from The Birthday Massacre. For the longest, this was in my rankings, but it wound up getting overtaken. I still love it though, and hearing some of the songs takes me back to when I saw them earlier this year and how I finally got to see this band after being in love with them for over a decade. And now, it's time for the big one, my album of the year. Pirates from Visions of Atlantis. I called it earlier this year when this album came out that it just might be my album of the year, and look what happened. This, like Beautiful Distortion and Revival, is another comfort album for me that dropped this year. Packed with songs that just boost me on such a personal level, this album really helped me through the first stretch of my breakup. And this band really stepped their pussies up with the production and writing, because I've never heard a Visions of Atlantis album sound this big, epic, and wonderful before. I really hope they keep up this big sound because it definitely suits them perfectly. From start to finish, this album is such an amazing journey that just fills me with life. Although I love my sad and dark songs, I definitely fucks with the ones that just make me feel good. A little side note, I definitely need to see them live again because after seeing them earlier this year when they toured with Dragon Force, they became such an epic band to me since their stage presence is just so fucking good. And my favorite songs off this album are In My World, Legion of the Seas, and Master the Hurricane. And that's it. I hope this video didn't turn out to be too long. I know I can be a rambler, but I wrote out a script for this video, but even then we know that always can't help. What did you guys think about my top 10? Did any of them make it into your rankings? Did some of these releases do it for you, or did some of them not do it for you? Or did you even recognize some of these? Let me know down in the comments along with what your favorite releases were this year, because you guys know I'm always down to hear new stuff and stuff that's new to me. Now, before I go, I just want to say thank you to those of you who have stuck with me and waited on me to return. This break has definitely been needed, and I cannot wait to make a proper return early next year. Not exactly sure when that's going to be just yet, but it's something I'm looking forward to nonetheless. I have many new ideas that I want to explore with this channel, and I hope you all are excited for new things as I am, whenever they wind up happening. And same thing goes for my beauty fashion lifestyle channel. I'll be making a return to it as well at some point too. But it's time for me to dip out. I've been here for a hot minute, and so have you, and I'm ready to go back into YouTube hibernation. But until I see you all in my next video, whenever that may be, goodbye.